This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Daddy Warpig, RemipunX, and Dorrinal. We are back. That's right, Geek Gab, the Geekarific Gabfest. One show a week, 1 hour of all fun, no work. Everything geeky is on the table, and let me warn you, we have a brand new up-and-coming writer today. So we're going to be talking a lot about science fiction, we're going to be talking a lot about fantasy, but anything geeky is on the table, so any questions you have, throw them out in the chat. We will be happy to get to them. The show is every Sunday 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The reason why I paused there is because the YouTube channel just started throwing my own voice into my ears, and I was momentarily shocked by the sheer volume I, your host, produce. I'm going to stop talking for just a second and give a chance for our co-hosts and our special guest, Brian Niemeier, and correct me if I pronounce that wrong. Give everybody else a chance to say hi. Go for it, Dorrinal.
Hey, everybody. How were those vibrations? Good? Thought so.
Remy, please.
Hi, everybody. It's Remy. It's good to see you this week.
And last but not least, our special guest, Brian. Is it Niemeier? Am I pronouncing that even close to correctly?
Very close. It's Niemeier.
Niemeier, okay. We have, by the way, before I forget, we have some special goodies, special treats to hand out to those of you in the audience, courtesy of our guest from last week, Oliver B. Campbell, Notorious Three Dog, and Remy will be telling you what you need to do to win one of these four video games. We can have 4 potential winners tonight, only one to a customer. She will tell you what you need to do to win one of these. But first, I want to introduce our guest. He is a brand new writer, and by that I mean he has just barely made his first professional sale at rate. What is the current going rate for a science fiction fantasy author anyway?
Pro rate is considered between 3 and 6 cents a word. Well, it varies somewhat.
And yeah, folks, if you're talking about submitting something to a magazine, they count up the number of words you put in a story and multiply that by pennies, and that's what you will end up getting paid. And your sale was to you're not selling a novel, not publishing a novel, you are selling a story to journal, the Sci Phi journal.
Correct.
Go ahead, please.
By the way, really quick, that's Phi is in P-H-I, the Greek letter. I was asked to be very clear about that. But go ahead.
By the way, I have put links to the Sci Phi journal, links to Brian's blog, and links to his Twitter account in the comments, in the description of the video, and of course links to the rest of us, just in case you want to check it out, Sci-Fi Journal. And I will tell you why you should check it out, because it's a great journal, and Brian has more detail on that he can enlighten us with. Why is it that that was your first professional sale?
Well, basically the same reason that any writer sells anything, which is that I got the right manuscript in front of the right editor at the right time. But you probably want to know the reason that I submitted to Sci-Fi Journal, and it's because I did my research, I checked out the magazine. It was actually recommended on John C. Wright's website, who you mentioned on your other show before. I'm a reader of John's, and took his recommendation. The main aspect of Sci-Fi Journal that I appreciate is that it's not just a journal of science fiction, but science fiction and philosophy. And I have a deep and abiding interest in that subject. So not only will you find first-rate science fiction stories by some luminaries in the field, like John C. Wright, also another up-and-comer, Joshua Young, appeared in the first issue, will be appearing again. But I was also asked to submit a series of food for thought questions, and these appear at the end of every story. So Sci-Fi Journal doesn't only publish stories for entertainment. There is that, of course, but also stories that make you think, that raise metaphysical and philosophical questions through science fiction.
And hence the PHI, the Phi, that stands for philosophy. Yes, it's kind of a pun, and I actually respect that. I respect a magazine with the balls to have a pun as its name. I mean, that just says, hey, we're here. We're going to do exactly what we want to do, and people who are, tiddly little nitpickers can get lost. So, are you selling? Because they have essays and stories. Did you sell an essay or a story?
I sold a short story. It's called Strange Matter. I describe it as China Syndrome meets Groundhog Day.
That sounds awesome.
That was the exact same response my editor gave me. Thank you.
I would read that just on the description.
I'm
Well,
listening.
that's the idea.
Did somebody say Groundhog Day?
Yes.
I'm gonna pause for a second while I copy and paste some stuff because Remy just sent me a link. I'll let Remy and John have, if you have any questions or anything.
Well, because I don't want to run out of time before giving away all the goodies, I am going to bust right into doing some trivia. So, dearest viewers, what we have tonight, because the awesome Oliver Campbell, give him much thanks, has given us 2 copies of Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition and 2 copies of Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition to give away to you.
How he works into the show here. He was already a guest, but that one show wasn't enough. He had to come back. and he's not even the guest, but he's going to help us out here, right? And it starts with just being a guest, and then he provides some treats, some prizes, and pretty soon he's going to worm your way into your heart.
He already owns my heart as my fighting game husbando. He already has that role, but soon everyone who watches Geek Gab will love him just as much. So here are the rules to win these awesome prizes. I have 4 trivia questions based on our awesome guests this evening, so they are all writing based. It is totally cool to Google the answer. Obviously, I can't tell if you Googled it or not, but the key is to tweet it fastest. You want to tag in me, Daddy Warpig, and Dorrinal. I can't say that. You have too many vowels.
It's just Dorrinal. Come on.
I can't mouth it. I'm sorry. I just want you to be John. In the tag, as well as hashtag GeekGab. First person to tweet the answer to me is going to get either, and I'll let you pick, either a copy of Fallout 3 Game of the Year or Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition. So our first question is going to be, let me go to my tabs and figure this out.
I'm going to make this a little bit easier on people, but all you'll have to do is type in the answer and then type in the hashtag. I'm going to set up a trivia answer tweet, so all you have to do is respond to that tweet, type in the answer, and then you got to make sure to include the hashtag. If you don't include the hashtag, we will cheerfully, brutally, and cruelly disqualify.
Ignore you.
Because
Much
I
ignoring.
am that mean.
He's a meanie pants. So he is going to set it up to make this super, super easy for you. I was being mean and making it hard. My bad. So as soon as you're ready, let me know, and I will fire off our first question. Okay, so our first question is, now everybody knows the Hugo Awards, I hope, and if not, Google Foo and educate yourself. I want to know who won Best Novel for 2014. Title of the novel as well as the author. Remember to include the hashtag GeekGab when you answer, and I am going to tweet deck to look for you guys right now.
Okay, Brian, congrats on getting your first story sold.
Thank you.
I'll start with the softball stuff. So what got you into writing? What got you into sci-fi and philosophy specifically?
Well, it was actually tabletop role-playing games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Long story short, I got tired in my local group of no one being able to carry through a game to completion. We'd get together, gen characters one week, and then maybe play once, and then someone else would say, "Oh, I've got an idea. I want to run, Cyberpunk, or I want to run AD&D or Rifts." So I kept getting blue-balled. Like, I want to complete the narrative here. I want to tell my character story. So I just took it upon myself to start GMing, and soon found that what interested me most about role-playing was telling a story. I was literally a storyteller more than a GM. So
that's great. So did you find out, were your groups getting tired of, oh God, Brian's railroading us again? You know what, Brian, why don't you just tell us the story already?
Well, probably, come to think of it, thanks for confronting me with that. They're probably just too nice to tell me that that's what they were thinking. But I've had a lot of support from them. So, yeah, basically, I came to writing fiction from GMing wrong.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And we have our winner. Patton is first to tweet in with the correct answer, which is, I'm going to say the title of the novel wrong because, again, I have a problem pronouncing vowels.
He doesn't have the hashtag. Are we going to let him slip?
Oh, no, he doesn't have the hashtag. Patton, retweet, bud, fast.
I mean, I'm a big old softy, I guess. I might have let it slide by, but I'm not so sure that would be absolutely
General Patton
fair.
as his header. It confused my brain because Patton's hot.
Sorry, I have to ask. Do you even have trouble pronouncing vowels when you go to the dentist and like that dentist hook is in your mouth? And
it's worse when I'm tired and I can't even explain it to people. But like, I'm saying two different words right now: 10 and 10. I said one with an I and one with an E, and then I have problems with A's and U's. So, and I can usually force my mouth to do it, but I haven't slept in over 48 hours, so I'm a little loopy.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's gonna make for some great radio. Trust me.
Man, she is really, really tired. Man, and nobody else is jumping in on that either. That's what's surprising.
Really?
Come on, guys. We've got 2 free games. You guys get to pick. Who is Hugo? Oh, Marco, you silly head, you.
Okay, I'm gonna just give it to Patton then because.
There he goes. He got it. He retweeted it.
Oh,
He's the hero of the day. Okay,
Yay.
Patton, I will DM you right now, my friend, and get all of this set up. You gents continue on with your lovely literary talking. I'll be fangirling over here on mute.
Okay, so I do actually have a good question. When you were playing role-playing games, tabletop games, what was your favorite game to play? If you were switching a lot, were you switching between full sets of games, or are you switching between GURPS Cyberpunk and then GURPS Fantasy, then GURPS whatever, or?
Good question. Yeah, full sets of games. But to go back to your first question, my group's favorite system is actually one we created ourselves, which is why I'm really excited about your Infinity project. Because I've been there, man. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll ask this question because it's the question I want to ask.
Use the playtesters anyway, Brian. You done just volunteered.
Oh, I was going to anyway. I'm totally down.
The system you guys put together, was it... Because there is a difference between something you can put together that's kind of a pastiche of 6 different games that has little features you like from a bunch of different ones, and then something you have to put together to publish or show other people, even if you're just publishing it for free.
Right.
People freak out if you have mechanics that are too obviously lifted from other games, and so even if you're going to include a concept you got from another game, you have to run it through the ringer and think about it and rework it till it looks like it's something you came up with completely originally.
Okay.
But the house system you guys created, was that something they created from scratch, or is it one of those fun games where you just throw in bunches of stuff from all kinds of things?
It evolved organically over like the last 10 years. It started out as West End Star Wars D6. Okay. So we're basically using the D6 engine, but then we were all really big anime fans, and I decided, well, I'm going to try to run a Gundam game. So I started looking through my library and trying to find the best system to do it. I was like, with a few tweaks, I've got an idea for this. So I basically took the main core mechanic from WEG Star Wars, took out the wild die, because, I'm sorry, sometimes you just aren't skilled enough to do something. That's my personal view on that. And I kept the damage charts. And then me and my buddy worked up a whole bunch of like mech creation rules, because the one glaring omission we found in WEG was we didn't find the ship creation rules to be robust enough. So we tinkered on that, and we've been tinkering on it like every time we've gone back to play for 10 years, and we just have a blast.
And you can actually, because of what I remember from WEG Star Wars, with the different scales, you have like the personal scale and the speeder scale and the ship scale, cap ship scale. You can work in mechs without having to rework a bunch of the core mechanics from that game.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. That sounds like a really obscure question that would make you think that I know a ton about all kinds of different role-playing games. And
I was going to say, that took about 30 seconds to go outside of the role-playing games that I already know.
It's not actually true. I know a ton of about 5 different role-playing games. I learned STEM to CERN, and then I know a little bit about a bunch of other games. And so it's not hard to stump me. That just happens to be one of the ones I've played a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, and actually, I've then gone off and I'm working on my own original system from the ground up for my series of fantasy novels, which are currently unpublished. Both the novels and the game are unpublished. I'm going to be looking to fix that for one or both of them in the future here. But yeah, like you, I'm currently working on my own system from scratch.
Are there just days where you want to scream and throw it all away and go back to doing something somebody else has already done?
You have no idea how much restraint I'm exercising right now not to do it at this moment.
I have had some days where you have a big, huge problem that you've been butting your head up against for months, and you finally get a solution, and you're like, yes, I got it, I solved it. And then immediately, as soon as you solve this solution, it causes like 3 other problems that you have to fix, and you're like, oh, son of a, can I just be happy for 5 minutes?
Tell it on the mountain. That's what editing anything is like. I hate to tell you.
Like editing stories or novels or whatever?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Because I actually had my first fantasy novel professionally edited by L.J. Lamplighter, which was John C. Wright's lovely and talented wife. So she gave me back a list of things to change and fix and clean up. And yeah, when you're working with a professional editor, there's some tense moments. You're like, okay, I've got that fixed. Oh, and now this thing from page 45 doesn't make sense, and this thing from page 100 doesn't make sense. Okay, now I fixed those. Now there are 8 more things I have to fix all around the book. So, but it's a big relief to get that done. Don't give up. Just work through it, then uncork the champagne, throw yourself a little party.
Yeah, my method for dealing with big bad problems is to put them in the back of my mind and go off and do something else for a while, and then come back and take a look at them to see if there was anything different I missed the first time. Because I know there's some people who just sit down and they work and they work and they work after every day, and then at the end of 18 months they have an entire system ready to go. And I literally don't know how they do that, because when I hit a big problem, I just have to stop thinking about it and go do other things, and then come back and try to figure out what solution I might have had. Okay, let's move on past it. That's enough of me grousing about development. Is software like that?
It's just like that. It's absolutely just like that. I mean, the truth is, not only can you only put so many hours a day in of good, solid, thoughtful work, but sometimes you you see a problem or you encounter a problem, and the best thing for you is to walk away. You either take a break, literally take a walk, go to lunch, or if you work at one of these nice big companies that give you a lot of Pepsi, go get a Pepsi, or work on something else. Like me and a lot of people on my team, sometimes we get stuck on sort of the big thing that we're working on. We'll find a little bug to fix, and there's always important little things that need to be done, but little things don't have that same priority as the important stuff. But that's what it's like. It's just the same developing software, and I imagine just any other creative endeavor where the problem to a solution isn't mechanical. My dad and actually most of my family grew up roofing, doing construction and roofing, and it's just amazing to see them, work with them day in and day out. But when a problem comes up, often it's a mechanical problem, or it's a problem they've encountered before, and they're like, oh, I need to go pick this up from Home Depot, and then I can, fabricate a solution. But for a creative endeavor, it's totally different. It's just like you and Brian described.
Interesting.
Okay, so let me ask a question. So speaking of like all of these glommed together mechanical settings, one of the coolest settings I've ever heard described for a role-playing game was John C. Wright's description of his house campaign from like 15 or 20 years ago, where it was every single fictional game under the sun pushed together under an overarching mythos. And I can't even remember all the stuff he was talking about. It was the Cthulhu mythos, plus Dune, plus the Amber books, plus the DC Heroes comic book universe, all of that under one overarching mythos to explain how it all worked together. I'm assuming you read that article.
Yes, did you read the one where he talks about how he actually ran a pickup game for some West End Games editors that had like Silver Surfer, Elric, a Hobbit, and a little girl?
Yeah, those are the PCs. Those are the PCs they put in there.
That was delicious.
I'm wondering, I know he put a modified version of that, or a heavily disguised version of that, as the background mythos to his 3 Chaos novels, Orphans of Chaos, so on and so forth. I'm just wondering if I'm assuming here, I'm making a vast assumption that you have had discussions with John outside of the public view. I was wondering if he had ever considered putting that together for an actual role-playing setting to sell to people.
I do not know, but I can ask him.
Because
that's a great question.
No lie, I would buy that in a second. I mean, the Infinity Files setting, and then the predecessor setting to that, which is a game called Torg, both revolve around that sort of thing. And I guess The Strange by Bruce Cordell and Monty Cook does, but I haven't read that, so I don't know like exactly what their mythos is. They all revolve around that same sort of multiverse idea where you can have fantasy and cyberpunk and horror, gothic horror and steampunk characters all adventuring together. I would love to see his take on that as a mythos put out in a book you could pick up and run something with.
Yeah, well, he loves questions, and I mean, heck, if you wanted to, you could get a hold of him and field that one, or I could, but yeah, I mean, I agree, that's a great idea. I mean, I'd love to play it.
Okay. I'm trying to think if I should ask you all the typical questions writers get asked, or if I should... I'm waiting for people in the chat stream to come up with good questions to ask. Maybe we should... Okay, let me do this. Man, I am fumbling all over the place. We're going to go...
Stay brief.
Yeah, get Remy to ask another trivia question because we're almost halfway through the show. So she's going to ask a trivia question, and we're going to throw out another chance to win one of the 3 remaining games. And then, after that, be thinking of questions to ask Brian to throw out in the chat. I've got a couple questions that I'm going to ask after that, so take it away, Remy.
Okay, our next See, I can't even talk tonight, you guys. Our next question is along the same lines. It's going to be the World Fantasy Award winner for 2014. Again, in the novel category, we're going to want the author's name as well as the title of the novel. And don't forget the hashtag. And I think that's all of the information. So again, World Fantasy Award winner in the novel category for 2014.
Okay. If you know the World Fantasy Award winner for 2014, or if you can Google it quicker than anyone else, you can win your choice of either the Game of the Year version of Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, the Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious edition.
And actually, it looks like Austin in chat has a question, so keep an eye out for that. It looks like he's typing right now. Well, I head to the Twitters to see who's going to be our next winner.
Okay. My question is this, and I was debating about whether to ask these typical questions because you always get writers and they always ask the same questions, and it kind of irritates me. But now that I'm like in the position of actually asking the questions, I think, oh, that's why they ask these.
Holy cow, that was super fast. Okay,
somebody got it already.
Artsy Aussie is our our winner with The Stranger in Oleandra by Jiminy Cricket. Right. It was close. It's not actually the flower that I just said, but by Sophia Samatar. I'm not allowed to say words anymore. So what I need you to do, Artsy, is shoot me a DM with a link to your Steam profile and which of the two you would like. I can either send you Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition or Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition. Patton is awesome and is actually accepting their prize as a gift that they're going to be able to re-give to pass on the love. So people should definitely follow Patton as well, because woohoo people who like to give away games.
Yes.
Oh, we had someone in chat just making sure they weren't sure that we wanted questions. Just want to clarify that. We love getting questions from chat. That's what we have Remy here for.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of not doing a show just by myself, is that people can actually ask questions of me or the guest or anybody else and get like responses. When I'm doing the show just by myself, I couldn't keep track of chat because I had to keep talking every single minute. Okay, so my question for Brian is this: what is the one piece of advice you would give to people who are just starting out and want to make stories that don't suck? And I'm not talking about writing or composition that is bad. I'm talking about the story themselves. What would you give someone advice on actually putting together a story that doesn't suck?
Yes. Readers nowadays want two things. They want character and conflict. I heard that from Brandon Sanderson, by the way. That's not my original advice. But he's right. Because nowadays, especially, when there's so many other storytelling media that print-based authors have to contend with and compete with, we need to offer something that movies, for example, or video games can't. And the one area where the written word is still superior to visual media is in the ability to get inside of the character's head and reveal motivation. Whereas in a movie, say, you'd have to resort to a voiceover that can tend to be intrusive unless you're Scorsese or someone who really knows what he's doing, or huge info dump. So people read for character, not necessarily even just to live vicariously through this character, but the more you know about the character on the page, the more you root for that fictitious person. It's some kind of magic, just the way people's brains are wired. And then another writing metaphor I'll borrow is, so you've established these characters, made people care about them. will then release a pack of wild dogs to chase them up a tree, and then throw rocks at them. So that's the second act, and then set a fire to the base of the tree and take a chainsaw to it. Just ask yourself, what is the worst possible thing I can do to these people, and then do it. Or even worse, in case you get inspired in the course of writing, and then get them back down.
Character and conflict. Okay. So, all right. Character being the unique point of view and all of the interesting stuff that goes into someone's background that distinguishes them from other people, either in the real world or in fiction. Conflict is all the bad stuff that happens to them that forces them to make choices and take actions, and in that you reveal a lot of who they are, what their morals are, what their personality is, what their background is, so you don't just have to type it out and leave it to just telling or handing people an exposition. Is that a good summary of the...
That's really good. You've done this before, haven't you?
No, I've done other things before, but not those two. I have read other stuff like this before, yes.
You see, that's funny that you mentioned character and conflict, because if I were going to go with two things, judging by what I see on the internet, I would probably go with TNA.
Well, to each his own. But, yeah, so exactly. And conflict doesn't have to necessarily be something horrible, but that's generally where the entertainment value is. And one of the other reasons I submitted to Sci Phi Journal is they're firmly committed to putting story first, putting entertainment first. So nowadays, like with the Hugo controversy, if you followed Larry Correa or John C. Wright, Sarah Hoyt, any members of the Evil League of Evil, there's a big battle going on right now in science fiction for, what comes first. Is science fiction mainly a teaching medium to give examples of proper conduct, and is it an etiquette primer or a treatise on citizenship, or is it primarily a means of entertainment? I'm one who comes down firmly on the story comes first. I'm paid as an author to entertain you, to entertain my readers. Now, if I can work a theme into that imparts a moral, and like John C. Wright said, if you want to find the moral in a story, it's the winning behavior. That's great. That's icing on the cake. That enhances the writing. But, again, writers are in competition with all other media. We've got to be entertaining. We've got to entertain first.
Sorry, your comment, I hadn't actually read that line from John C. Wright. Your comment about that the moral in the story is the winning behavior, or if I could rephrase that, the most successful behavior, the character who most succeeds in achieving their goals using their personality, morals, tactics, whatever. That's what the moral of the story is that the implicit moral, if not explicit moral of the story, is that was behavior to be admired or emulated. And what that made me think of is Watchmen. And so I immediately began analyzing the ending of Watchmen again, because, and this is deliberate on the part of it was Alan Moore, is that every character in the Watchmen was a stand-in for a moral system, or at least what he saw as being the moral system of certain people in the real world or comic book characters or whatever, and I immediately started weighing the ending of it and debating back and forth about which character you might think had succeeded, and immediately stopped thinking about hosting the show and realized I had paralyzed myself. I needed to shelve that for a second, shelve that for another time.
Well, that's really interesting, because that was the first story I thought of when I read that line too. And I actually came to a conclusion.
Please, that's what we're here for.
It's Rorschach. He's the only one who doesn't compromise. And if you look at the end of the story, he has the last word. because he gets his journal out. And they kind of leave it up in the air as to whether or not the intern is going to select it for publication. But, yeah, and I know Moore would probably disagree with me, and in fact, he's always been surprised by the popularity of the character. Like, no, he was an example of what not to do. You're not supposed to like this guy. But, again, he did such a great job of filling in that character's background and giving his motivations that you can't help but root for Rorschach, even though he does some reprehensible things.
Yeah, and he's the most, it's not just unsympathetic, but as an individual, he goes out of his way to make him really, repulsive, like physically. He doesn't shower, so he stinks really, really badly. He's not physically attractive. All he has going for him is that superhuman level of, or almost superhuman level of fitness that all the other Watchmen, the comedian and all of them are all just above normal people in terms of strength and agility and speed and such. He has that going for him, but basically all he has is that obsessive need to see that evil is punished and justice is done.
Yeah, and again, he's the only character who has a stated moral code who never, ever for a moment violates it.
And I think that's why people respond to the character, is
Totally.
they like someone who has a passionate drive to make sure that the evildoers are punished when everybody else in the story is, for whatever reason, seemingly good reasons, has walked away from that or put it down. They have talents, they have abilities, and they're deliberately not using them.
Right, and you could also make the case that it was Ozymandias who has the winning behavior, if not for that last cryptic line at the end where Doc Manhattan hints, this isn't going to last.
Yeah.
You've set the hand of the doomsday clock back maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, but human beings are going to do what they're going to do, and as much as you try to control things, I'm a living example that there are matters that you have no control over and no knowledge of. And Rorschach is if you look at his origin scene where he looks up, into the smoke billowing into the starry sky and realizes, well, we're on our own. And that strikes me as a direct commentary on what Doc Manhattan says, because Rorschach confronts what Ozymandias never had to confront until that moment, that his abilities might not be equal to the task. And Rorschach concludes, well, screw it, I'm going to do my best. That's all we can do.
Yeah, and that seems like something Ozymandias, because he's never met anyone who's his equal, and only met one individual who's his master, who's better than him, and that's Manhattan.
Right.
He's never really gotten, and because he built it all himself, he's never gotten that humility from being short of achieving something. He's never been humbled by that experience, and he's never faced
the Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah, he built it out of himself. So he thinks that the reason why everyone else is weak is because they aren't as driven as he was, as ambitious as he was to mold himself into the Ubermensch. And so it isn't just that he's not humble, he has active contempt for everyone because he thinks, well, I made myself into this, therefore everyone could, and the only reason why you haven't is you're not as good as me. And those two characteristics, those two beliefs kind of define him, which takes us right back to the character and conflict quote.
Full circle.
Okay.
Well, we have questions coming from our chat. Marco, who is always excellent with the questions, he asked, do you care for gray stories, like topics and protagonists that are not exactly good or bad, or fight for noble reasons, or those that are in existence?
That's a great question. If you have a chance to read some of my sci-fi fantasy, I basically do space opera that leans more toward the fantastic, that would be a pretty good description of a lot of the characters. So I don't have a problem with that. Moral ambiguity is that perhaps a more precise way to phrase it, you guys think? Like morally ambiguous characters or situations?
Sure, that sounds fine to me. I mean, that sounds like a good restatement of what he was asking, yeah.
I don't want to put words in his mouth, but in real life, there are very few moral situations that are just, I hate to fall back to the cliche, but black and white with no nuance. On the other hand, I do believe that there are some universal rights and wrongs, being interested in philosophy as I am, but I think it can be really interesting to create a universe with a backdrop where, yes, there are objective standards of morality, but then throw morally gray characters into it. Because, another Sanderson trope, it's usually more interesting if a character is presented with a right choice and a wrong choice to make the wrong choice. That's where some of the most interesting conflicts come from. So, if on the one hand you're just dealing with your classic paragon hero character like Superman, for example, well, unless you're really, really good, that can get dull kind of fast. Also, on the other end of the spectrum, if you're just dealing with like complete black nihilism, no hope, no room for things to turn around or get any better, imagine Watchmen with only Rorschach and Dr. Manhattan, and that's what every character is like.
Yeah.
So it can be, being morally ambiguous can be a good source of conflict, I think, as long as there's some indication that there is a winning behavior, that there is some outside standard to show that that pull of the devil and the angel standing on the character's shoulders, trying to tempt one way or the other, and then see where it goes.
I like that answer a lot. I'm a very big fan of anti-heroes and things like that, and I think they sort of fall underneath that gray label as well, just because they are the ones that we're rooting for, but sometimes it's a bit painful to cheer for them along the way. Alex Murdoch has our next chat question, and it kind of leads into our third trivia question, so it's sort of perfect. What are some of your favorite authors? They don't necessarily have to be sci-fi fantasy.
Sure. Well, some of my favorite authors in sci-fi fantasy are Frank Herbert, J.R.R. Tolkien. You can probably tell by now that I really love John C. Wright's work. I like Larry Correia. I also like Mary Robinette Kowal. I'm a big fan of Shades of Milk and Honey, and I like Dan Wells' horror stuff.
I just read him.
Really, which one?
All of them. Literally, I just read him. All of his books, like 2 months ago. I read everything he wrote.
You're ahead of me. Well done. I've only read I'm Not a Serial Killer.
I think that took me 3 weeks. I read everything he wrote.
You're wasting me. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you listed a bunch of great authors, but the correct answer was Oliver Campbell. Sorry, guys.
Oh, I didn't win the game.
Well done.
You'll have to give away that trivia thing to someone else then.
I'm remiss.
So our next trivia question, and I am going to try not to bungle this, is going to be related to Brian's favorite author, Frank Herbert. I want to know the final Dune novel that he wrote, not in the series, but the last one that he wrote that was published. I'll even give you the publishing year. It was 1985. So you're going to want to tweet the complete title of the book as well as the hashtag Geek Gab to all of your lovely hosts, and then we still have, because Patton is waiting to select his game after everybody else has picked theirs, so you still have the option of Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition or Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition. So get those tweets. Again, we're looking for the last Dune novel actually written by Frank Herbert.
Can't wait to see who gets this.
Okay, while someone's working on that, do you have another question from the audience, from the chat? Oh, she's have to pay attention to that. That's right.
All right.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was staring at the Twitter really hard. Let me scroll up. I'm failing at multitasking.
I think our first question is from Shaq. What science fiction work would you most like to see turned into a big budget film?
Oh, that's a good one.
That really is. Okay.
Do you want a second to think about it?
I am thinking about it. The problem is narrowing it down to just one. Monster, I know it's not science fiction, but I really want to see Terry Gilliam finish his Don Quixote project. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have heard of it. I heard of that. I don't know much about it though.
Oh, there's a documentary on it you can find on Netflix. It's just heartbreaking what the man's been through to try to get that done. He's been working on it for over a decade. But anyway, in terms of science fiction, I'm really going to geek out on this one. I'd like to see someone do Green Lantern right and do the entire Blackest Night storyline.
Green Lantern can be done so much better than that movie did.
Yeah.
Who they have playing him? Is that Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh boy.
He can do Deadpool, because that's what Deadpool is. He's a sarcastic smartass, but he did not Green Lantern.
Yeah. Oh man, and speaking of Deadpool, that was just the worst decision. I'm gonna go right into hate on that X-Men movie. With they cast the perfect guy to be Deadpool, and then by the end of the movie they sew his mouth shut. What were they thinking?
I don't think they were thinking.
That was a terrible movie. Just
well, and they
Wolverine.
clearly had no idea what they had. I think that people sort of take for granted, because of how sort of quote-unquote silly Deadpool comes across, what an insanely rabid and big fan base that he has. But the fact that Ryan is so excited about the role, just, I can't wait. I have much hope. Deadpool is my love, so much hope. I could hijack and talk about comics, so I'm going to mute so I don't do that.
I'd be all for it, but that's your decision.
I'm not a big comic book guy, but I'm going to jump in and answer that question. Actually, one of the only things I've been reading lately is the Dresden Files from Jim Butcher, and I'd love to see a big budget movie with a proper script.
Well, I
didn't hate the TV show.
I didn't say anything about the TV show. Although I'll say that Harry Dresden is currently playing a nice detective on the show Arrow, which is a very great show that you should all watch.
Yes.
Which I call Leather Pants, by the way. If anybody ever hears me mention Leather Pants, I'm talking about Arrow.
Oh,
yes,
I thought
because he wears leather trousers.
That is today's password. But no, I saw Jim Butcher at Gen Con this year, and he did mention, he was being kind of coy about it, but he's in talks with some people, whether it's for a movie or a new series. He really couldn't say, but plans are in motion.
So what do we do if nobody answers the question?
You get to keep...
No, I give them back to Ollie and tell him thank you very much.
Yeah, that makes sense. Here's the thing: when you get something in development, when they option a manuscript, that is basically, out of the things that get optioned that put in development, 1 out of 100 gets actually made. And this was even before the recent problems in Hollywood, but as recently as 7-8 years ago, the entire studio system is set up to make sure that nothing ever gets made in Hollywood and released. That's the entire structure of all the corporations, of all the studios, of all the production companies, is to make sure that nothing ever gets made. Because in order to make something, you have to spend money, and if you spend money, you're taking a risk, and if you take a risk, you might fail, and if you fail, you lose your cushy job at all your pay and all of the perks that come with being one of the powerful people in Hollywood. So they don't want anything to get made that isn't absolutely driven by someone. And so what you need to do as a scriptwriter, you find an actor who loves a part of your script, and the actor, they're the big name, they're the public face, they're the celebrity, they go, and if they're pushing behind it, something like that can get made. Or if you get a big auteur director like Spielberg or somebody, they can get something made. And rarely the studio themselves gets behind a script, but that has to go through a long process. So getting something into being optioned, if the Dresden Files has been optioned, the chance that it'll actually make it out the other end, even just as a movie that gets released, is virtually nil.
Yeah, I've heard similar things. I've heard that you need to have a fan base of at least 6 million people before Hollywood will consider optioning your stuff. Like no matter what property it is, if it's a novel, a game, a TV show, they're looking for that kind of built-in guarantee, because you're right, it's such a high risk now that they're on the blockbuster model. They don't make...
Okay, we have a winner. Finally, Global Congress LLC tweeted in the hashtag, it is Chapter House Dune. And yes, you had it backwards, but that totally works. I think we already follow each other, so that makes this very convenient. I will be sending you a DM momentarily.
My hat is off to you. Long live the fighters. Okay.
And Mr. Warpig, you should shoot out your question, because it is much more complex and they will need all 9 minutes. So whenever you are ready.
This person is known. This is the trivia question. Okay, it's the final trivia question of the show. So if you can answer this, you get your last copy of the video game. This person is known as the father of science fiction. He is the editor of Amazing Stories, and he is the first publisher to actually publish science fiction stories. He has a very specific name. If you can find out who that is and tweet it out, then you'll win the last copy of Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3, whichever we have left over after our other winners have made their choice. Actually, no, you get your choice, because one of our previous winners is waiting to see who's left over. So congratulations, you get your choice. I think we have time for one more, maybe 2 more questions from the chat.
Okay. I've got a question from the chat from Marco. This is directly to Brian. How much science emphasis do you put in your stories?
That varies a lot. In the short stories, they tend to be higher in science, like the one that I just had published in Sci Fi Journal is, I suppose you could say, it's the hardest in terms of science fiction, because it involves things like strangelets and super colliders and microscopic black holes. But really, I'm more of a fantasist at heart. So one of my prior stories, Beta Geminorum, which you can find at jerseydoublepress.com, is very light. It's very mushy science fiction. So I would say, on the whole, I'm more toward the soft side of SF.
Yep, we have time for another question.
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that.
Oh. Quick, think of something!
Let me see. I can't believe Remy does this every week. This is so hard. I'll find another one.
Well, we have our final winner as well. Final Macintosh is our final winner. With Hugo, I'm going to say it wrong. Is it Gernsbach?
Yeah, Hugo Gernsback, or at least that's how I pronounce it. So.
Okay, so Final Macintosh, I am. Oh, we are also already following one another, so I will be sending you a DM very shortly to get your Steam information. And woohoo! I think this has gone very well. Thank you everybody for taking part in our trivia, and much love to the wonderful Oliver Campbell for donating games for us to give away, because I love to give away video.
Oh man, I didn't win a single game.
You are ineligible.
Oh, curses. I didn't want one of those anyway. Is it bad? Can I say that I don't have any interest at all in playing Fallout?
Okay, so I have something to say real quick. Global Congress, who was our winner before Final Macintosh, does not have a Steam account. They're a awesome console gamer, not lame, my friend, and they're willing to give away their winnings to the first person to tweet to me in the hashtag Geek Gab right now saying they want a game. Tweet, and you will be the next in line to get a game. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
I'm actually answering a question in chat because it was something Brian mentioned the last time he was talking.
Ooh.
Someone asked if you were a fan of Larry Correa's, and you said yes. So I feel
Yes, I've met him. He's huge.
I feel more than confident in my ability to issue a proclamation in your name that you do in fact like. I've actually met Larry once as well. He's the person who instructed me on shooting a 50 caliber Barrett sniper rifle.
Oh, I'm jealous. How'd it go?
I was at a gun range. I was at a gun range doing research for my role-playing game, and it happened to be at a time where I could fire a lot of guns that I'd never fired before, ACOG sights and iron sights, and even a fully automatic weapon that jammed after I shot like 2 bullets.
Keep cutting in. I feel bad for GG1's ethics. It has to be #love. I'm so sorry. That makes Matthew King our final winner tonight. So I will be throwing, and also I follow everybody. I'm like a creepy stalker. I will be sending you a DM very shortly for your Steam information.
Is that you outside of the truth? The night vision goggles and the. Oh.
But anyway, so he one of the guns that was there that I got to shoot was the 50 caliber Barrett, and that thing is big and loud. I still have the brass sitting on my desk here.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you still have the ringing in your ears from the
what?
Firing it.
No, because they give you if you're at a proper gun range with people who know what they're doing, they give you earplugs to put in so you don't cause damage. Literally, one gunshot that you're holding a gun and shooting will cause permanent damage to your ears just once.
Let me say, you put way more effort into researching your games than I do, sir.
I'm actually have been thinking about in a year or so just going in and starting a self-defense class just to practice hand-to-hand combat.
You're the James Woods of RP designers.
I like to get my hands on things because and the second best thing is if you can't get your own hands on stuff like that is to read people who know what they're talking about. It seems like a lot of people who write role-playing games or play role-playing games have their grasp on combat is molded by TV, movies, and role-playing games, and not actually finding out what it's really like. And so if I was going to sit down and make up rules about it, I wanted to kind of know as much as I could about what it's like without actually having ever been in, a life-or-death struggle myself.
Oh. I've got to play test this now.
So, all right, we are down to our last minute or so. I will give everybody else a chance to talk before I sign us out.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on, Brian. It was a great pleasure talking sci-fi and role-playing games and everything.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Do hit us up if you actually start publishing and developing this game. Also, get in touch with us.
Sure.
Warpig and I, we love to game. We'll be happy to take a look at your stuff. And I believe we've already established that you've signed up for some Infinity playtests. Is that right?
That is correct.
He's been reading and commenting on the blog.
Oh, that's more than I do. Congrats.
Oh, quid pro quo. Daddy Warpig was the first person to comment on my blog, so returning the favor.
Well, I want to thank you as well for coming on, Brian. I am so sorry that I didn't get to ask you the bazillion teen questions that I had, but it was probably safest for everybody because my words would have been all garbled and stuff. And thanks, everybody, for watching, as always, and we will see you guys next week. Much love to all of you.
All right, and yes, next week we had a mix-up. This week was supposed to be our super secret AAA developer. They had some problems gaining access because they're on vacation, but they are scheduled for next week This is not a bait and switch. I felt so bad about having to come on the air and say that. It's not a bait and switch. Next week, a super secret AAA video game developer will be on the show. We're not going to be revealing their identity, but they will be answering any questions about development and the AAA development process that doesn't reveal personal details about who they are, what studio they work for, things like that. So that is in 1 week, 7 p.m. To 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Geekarific Gabfest, Geek Gab. Your hosts, RemipunX, Dorrinal, and me, Daddy Warpig, and we will be back.